Hi, my name is Mike and I'm one of the education consultants here at the Profs, and in today's video I get to talk about how to best prepare for exams based in science, technology, engineering and mathematics, otherwise known as STEM. Now, these tend to be exams that are actually quite scary for people because they do have the reputation of actually forcing you to say what the correct answer to something is. A lot of people go into these things thinking, I can't really express myself necessarily too well. There's a lot of pressure that rides on them. Maybe I've left it too late to actually start my revision for a lot of these things. So there is a massive overarching question. How can you optimize your time and how can you best prepare yourself mentally and give yourself the confidence to perform at your best in an exam like this, whether it be at an A-level standard or whether it be at a university standard? What I'm hoping today is that my top 5 tips that I'm going to give are going to transcend to both of those parties, and you will be more than prepared to do your absolute best in an exam such as this, whether it be in specifically mathematics, whether it be in a science, again, whether it be in technology or engineering, or even something that might relate to any of those subjects, maybe like a social science, like psychology, for instance, that asks about statistics, something I had to help somebody with very recently. But getting into my very first top tip, that is actually going down to what we discussed earlier. Make sure that you're setting a revision plan early. Now, I usually try to set a revision plan maybe a few months before I actually take a test, usually sort of like 3 to 4 months. And the reason for that is it usually takes a little bit of time for you to not only sort of understand how to go through particular problems, but in order to absorb the necessary fundamental information that underpins what you're being tested on. You can also make sure that you are giving yourself enough time to be able to cover everything. It also goes back to this idea that I believe it takes, and this is a little bit of a myth, there's not really a science behind it, but there is a correlation with actually how well this holds for someone. It takes about 10,000 hours to be able to master a skill. And that sounds like a lot of time in of itself. You would have done already a lot of the learning before this point in theory. But in order to sort of contextualize how to use everything, you've got to give yourself those extra few hours in equal treatment across multiple subjects. You're probably not just taking the one exam, you're probably taking several at once, where you can decide very early on, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, how do I address those weaknesses, how do I build on them, how do I regularly assess actually sort of where I'm strongest and where I am weakest. You also get into the habit of getting into sort of past exam papers early, which we'll get to a little bit later. But make sure whatever you do, you're giving yourself that time and that space to plan out how you're going to maximize that time. You could also begin to think about crossing over multiple subjects together in sessions if there are things that relate. So for example, if you have a mechanics exam and you have that very close to a physics exam that looks at Newtonian dynamics, something from mathematics, something from physics together, you might want to study a lot of the skills that overlap those two subjects, maybe in one session. Saves you half the time. So it's really good if we sort of know early on how we can maximize our time to make it as efficient as possible when it comes to revision. If you do like what you hear in this video, before I go on to any more of the points, make sure to like and subscribe. If you do agree with these things, make sure to leave a comment. But I'm going to actually mention my second point, which is going to be to do with active recall past papers. I did promise I was going to get into that a little bit earlier. So 2 aspects really kind of in one thing. Active recall. I don't just want to be able to, read something and say, I've read it, I'm done. I want to be able to try and test my memory if I'm looking at theory, just to see how much of something I've understood, whether it be from a textbook or a revision guide. Those tend to be better, revision guides, if you're looking at A-levels. Textbooks or lecture notes is something you're probably going to get back to a lot if you're studying for a STEM exam, if you're at university. And again, past exam papers, you need to know sort of how they're going to be structured, how long they take. You want to know how it feels to be able to do such papers so that you can organize your time within it. You can also work out as well, maybe if you're at university, what the lecturer is like, specifically what questions he typically goes back to. You might be able to get a sense of whether it's going in any direction in terms of the syllabus as well. So it's really, really important that you at least say you've looked at a few past papers before you actually take the real thing. Now, my third top tip in terms of getting ready for a STEM exam is really, really important, but something that people very, very frequently get wrong. And that is they don't focus enough on the understanding of the theory, and they focus a little bit too much on rote learning. Now, that specifically refers to people that are looking at the same types of examples and they're trying to remember answers to specific questions, which is great maybe at the earlier levels, perhaps at GCSE or even before GCSE. But beyond that, what is really going to get you the marks in things is you sort of being flexible enough to be able to answer questions, not necessarily on any topic, but on the topics that you know of, asked in unpredictable ways. Now, what can we do to be able to sort of get ready for that? Breaking down formulae, understanding what each variable means, sort of how they're derived under different contexts, what assumptions are made in order for them to apply to different models. If you're looking at biology, for instance, where we're not looking at the mathematics, we are looking specifically maybe at those like longer essays, perhaps if you're doing like AQA A-level, or you're sort of analyzing an experiment that is like completely new. How does that sort of relate to your understanding of maybe the microbiology that is observed under a microscope? Or like, how does your understanding of ecology work in maybe sort of ideas of like conservation efforts that are proposed in a question? So you need to be flexible enough to be able to answer questions in really unpredictable ways. Another sort of way to be able to build on that ability is regularly looking at practical examples of what you do know. So for instance, in physics, it could be you're looking at Ohm's law and how that applies to the charging up of a mobile phone. Or you could be looking at esters, which are in chemistry known to be incredibly sweet smelling. And you might want to look at the formulae that are used in like typical shampoos. I know there's like some phenols that are particular to like the smell of a strawberry or a banana that is often used in lots of industries, for example. What sort of functional groups are present in there that give those properties? So great if you're doing organic chemistry in that sense. But I do digress a little bit, which is kind of apt because my next point is practicing under timed conditions. And I have mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I have to stress this. You are not going to be able to develop your exam strategy by just looking at exam papers. You need to take them, timing yourself. You need to mark yourself very, very honestly based on how that has gone, because you know in that situation, you are not going to be able to develop your abilities unless you know how you work under pressure. The best way of doing that is simulating an exam environment. I would also even go further than that and say, if with some papers, you're looking at maybe some questions that you do know are easier, even with the easier ones, I would do this. Time each question if you can. If you don't have the ability to be able to sit down in a room for 2 or 3 hours or however long your exam is to take a paper and get ready, then why not actually just look at one question at a time, maybe, day by day, sort of time yourself, see how long you take. If you feel like you're taking really, really long, ask why. Are you making silly mistakes or are you overthinking a little bit of your answers, so you're taking a little bit slower? Have you gone down the wrong route in answering a question? If so, is that because you misread the question? Is it a reading comprehension issue? Or is it that you're missing a fundamental aspect of theory? These questions don't get asked and don't get addressed unless you're really, really challenging yourself. So you want to try to stray away from that sort of safe bubble of being like, well, I'm afraid to make a mistake, so I'm going to have the book next to me. I'm going to try a question and I'm going to immediately have a look at the answer if there is any part of the question I don't know, which is great for learning, not great for exam preparation. So try to get into the habit of doing that as soon as possible within your revision process. But obviously, a lot of these things are a little bit challenging to do on your own. Great if you can, but it's going to be much easier if you hire a tutor. So this is my final top tip. We have so many experts in lots of different aspects of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics here. I myself am a tutor in mathematics and physics and a little bit of computer science, teaching all the way up to sort of final year undergraduate level these days. Sometimes even master's level on the odd occasion. I'm not an exception to that rule. We have a lot of people here that have done master's degrees. Some of us have even done PhDs. Some of us are even lecturers at universities that are experts in these things. But working with someone one-on-one that can challenge you, that can double check exactly where you are with your learning, what you're doing, how you are following your daily study and revision habits, and sort of keeping you up to like a certain level of performance as you keep going, is really going to ensure that you're going to pass that exam, not even just pass it, but ace that exam that you are preparing for. So I'm sad to say we've come to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to like and subscribe in order to hear the latest information about university applications as well as tutoring services. If you have any questions yourself or any opinions about how some of these things are working, make sure to leave a comment in the comment section or even share it with a friend or family member if you think they might be interested. But if you want to hear directly from us, have a look at the contact information on screen right now. And as always, best of luck with your application.